Hey guys, so I want to talk to you a little bit about the market today and a really interesting demographic article comparing the boroughs and their population recently. So the first thing is, if you have been paying any attention, the real estate market in New York City has been significantly less busy than it was last year, or down about somewhere between 20 and 30% in terms of the number of contracts that are being signed right now. Although there's seasonal stuff and then there's sort of macro stuff, and seasonality to the market always continues to exist. So we are getting busier and more contracts have been signed recently in March and in February. So, but when you look at it year over year, last year was a huge year. This year is down significantly, although it is not dead. And one of the things that is interesting is that while you would expect with a huge drop in the number of transactions that are happening, you would expect a drop in price, but we're not seeing the same kinds of drops in price that you might expect. We're certainly not seeing 20% drops in price. The price drops on the sales side of things have been modest because there's low inventory. That also carries over into the rental market as well. There's just generally low inventory happening in New York right now. And part of that reason is because we have the high rates, and that does affect some buyers. Part of it is also because sellers who maybe a few years ago got mortgage rates of under 3% or 3% or very close to that, are looking at their new options if they want to buy a new place, and they're saying, "Oh wow, we're going to be paying double the rate, 6% on our mortgage rate as opposed to the 3% we have now." So that can be a little bit of a deterrent for people to want to move and sell and do that kind of bring more inventory onto the market. Now, one thing about that though is that some people you have to transact. Some people change jobs. Some people are having expanding families. These typically, there are a lot of reasons why people will transact or must transact regardless of the macroeconomic conditions. And that's why you still see a lot of transactions happening, just not as many as last year. And and the prices sort of suggest the fact that there is buyer demand out there because you're still the prices are remaining high. Despite and primarily because of the low inventory. So all that said, that's just a quick update in terms of how the real estate market in New York City is going in rentals and sales. And then I just want to share this very cool article with you, and it has to do with post-pandemic migration trends in New York. And this came out in January, and this is by a company that Placer.ai. They follow demographics using cell phones data. And one of the things that I remember talking to people about during the pandemic is everybody's like, "Oh, everybody's fleeing New York City. It's done, blah, blah, blah." We know now that that is not the case, and that actually there was a net migration into New York City during the 2020, not out. I saw that anecdotally with people coming, especially young people, young professionals, recent graduates from college, and artists in some case. Like the city in 2020 was 20% cheaper on the rent, and so we saw a lot of people actually moving in towards the end of 2020. But this is a really interesting thing. So population shifts in the boroughs. So here you have Kings County, is Brooklyn, this is Bronx, this is Queens, and Manhattan. Now, and Staten Island over here. What's really interesting is look at the difference in Manhattan population. It had a huge dip in March in 2020, right? And then by the end of 2020, we start to see this come up, and and look what's happened to the divergence between the Manhattan population and the rest of the boroughs. This is a very unusual trend, I think, and it does show you that maybe because of things like remote work, but certainly for one reason or another, the population in Manhattan has continued to explode versus the rest of the boroughs. And that is just interesting. You know, anytime you see something like that, it would suggest that you would probably also see an increase in prices, and could also account for some of that existing demand and why we are not seeing bigger price drops in both the rental and sales market. And the last thing I'll say about the Placer AI stuff is that we're a lot of people's perception of people moving out of the city during COVID was based on an article in the New York Times that tracked forwarding addresses to other places in the country at that time. I don't think that there is a more accurate way to tell where somebody is than by tracking people's cell phones. If you disagree with that, I'd love to hear about it. But I really like that data as a better quality of data. It's in terms of tracking demographics than looking at forwarding addresses, for example. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure we'll chat later. Talk to you.